So the brain is the largest sex organ in the human body. Never thought about it that way, have you? Well, let's talk about that. Well, hi everybody, my name is BJ with My Choice Education, and today we're going to talk about the human brain. And actually, this is going to be the first of a two-part video where we're going to talk about how the human brain, what role the human brain plays in sexual activity and our sexual choices. And the reason why we started this video with this question, or this thought that the human brain is the largest sex organ, that's because we don't normally think about it that way. We don't think about the brain as a sex organ, so to speak. But whenever it comes to arousal and our sexual thoughts and our actions and impact, the human brain is the whole thing. Like, all those things start there, and the impact, the lasting impact that happens in the brain cannot be understated, cannot be forgotten. We've got to talk about those things. So we're going to start talking about development. So this first video is going to be talking about the human brain's development and why that's important, why we need to understand that before we move into the second video, which is going to be about our brain chemicals and things like that. So understand that the human brain does not fully develop until age 25. The human brain is continuing to grow and develop, and different parts of the brain are maturing throughout that time. But 25 is the point when the human brain finishes all of that development process. And the last piece of the brain to finish development is something called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is located right here, right behind your forehead. It is the frontmost part of the brain, and it is the part of the brain that is primarily in charge of decision making. All of your reasoning skills, your deduction skills. I call it the wisdom center of the brain because it's from that part of the brain that we make decisions. Okay, now the reason why that's important to understand is previous to 25, while that part of the brain is underdeveloped, that means that the human brain's ability to think through a decision completely, to see the full picture of the decisions that are being made, is incomplete because that part of the brain is underdeveloped. That doesn't mean that young people cannot make good and sound choices. In fact, the reason why we do what we do here at My Choice, specifically whenever we educate teenagers, is because we believe in the teenager's ability to make sound and good choices. However, there's a reason why we are coached to trust other people, to seek advice, to talk to people who are older, wiser, and who know more about certain subjects, because we need each other to help see the full picture. And honestly, even once we hit that point, once we turn 25 and our brain is fully developed, it's a good life practice to have people around you who you can trust, who you can talk to about big issues, these major life-altering choices, because they can help you see the full picture. And when we have the full picture, we can make the best possible choices, not just a good choice or hopefully a good choice, but through that process, we can make the best choices for ourselves because we can see the full picture. Now, the other reason why this is important is because the human brain, in that developmental period, in our teenage years, in our adolescent years, before 25, the human brain is extremely moldable. Okay, we use this analogy at My Choice. We compare the brain to cement. Okay, prior to 25, the human brain is like wet cement. And if you think about wet cement, it's moldable, it's shapeable, it's malleable. You can do things with it. You can shape it. You can, make it to whatever you want. You can smooth it out. You can put your imprints into it. And it's a very absorbent material. You can add water and different liquids and things, and it's going to absorb things extremely quickly. The adolescent brain is much like wet cement in that it is moldable, it's shapeable, it's absorbent. Young people are able to absorb information so quickly. That's why they're in school during those teenage years and younger, because during that adolescent period, the brain is absorbing so much information. One of the best ways you can kind of get a real-time example of this, watch a baby, a young child, a 1, 2, 3-year-old. Watch them learn how quickly they can absorb any bit of information that you put in front of them. You say something, even if it's a slip up, a mistake, you say something out of order, that child picked it up, they know it now, and they're going to repeat it because their brains are like sponges. It's like wet cement absorbing everything that it can. And the choices that we make throughout our adolescence, throughout our teenage years, are helping to shape that cement. But here's the thing about cement. Eventually, it hardens and becomes a solid object. That's what happens at 25. Once the human brain turns 25, it hardens and becomes like a hardened cement pad. And whatever patterns, whatever habits, whatever choices have been made up to that point are going to solidify, and those are going to be patterns and habits that will become a foundation for the rest of that person's life, good, bad, or indifferent. So let me ask you this question. Is it easier to fix a mistake while the cement is still wet or to wait for it to dry? You're going to want to fix it while it's wet, while it's still moldable and shapeable. It's a lot easier to fix those mistakes and correct the course, so to speak, during that early phase, right? So just play this analogy out for me for a second. So imagine you have a room and that you decide that you want to completely redo the floor and you want a cement floor, right? So you hire a crew, the contractors come in and they work all day to lay this cement slab down. They put the wet cement in, right? They leave thinking their work is done. They're going to come back tomorrow to check on the finished product. But after they leave, somebody comes in and decides to go take a walk on this freshly laid wet cement floor. So they walk into the room, and while they're walking, because it's wet cement, they slip and they fall and they make a mess of the place, right? And then once they're done, they kind of stand up, look around, and they just decide, you know what? Not my problem. I'm going to leave, right? So the carpenter or the contractor comes back the next day to check on his work, expecting a perfect and pristine new floor, to find a disaster. The floor had hardened, but it wasn't smooth like he left it. It was messed up. It was jagged. It had holes in it. What is that contractor to do now? How does that contractor fix that floor? Can he just cover it up? Can he just add more cement to it? Maybe. But let me tell you something about cement. Cement does not stick to cement. If I have a cement floor and I want to put cement on top of it, that new slab of cement is not going to stick. It'll dry and just rest on top as a separate layer, which might work temporarily. But over time, it's going to crack, it's going to break, and it's going to become even more dangerous than it was before, and actually could cause more people to trip and fall. It can cause a lot more damage in the long run. The proper way for that contractor to fix that floor would be to bust up the floor, to completely break it out, and start over, which is a long process. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a crew. It's the same way with our brains, the human brain. During adolescent periods, the decisions that we're making as teenagers and young adults are shaping that cement. And if we happen to make a mistake, it's a lot easier to address it during those adolescent times. But if we start actively making choices during our adolescence, during our young adult years, that are forming patterns in our life that we don't address, we just kind of take them as normal, commonplace, like this is just the way it is. Maybe I don't have a support system to keep me accountable or whatever, and I just start making these choices. When I become an adult, those choices, that foundation is going to harden, and that's going to be the foundation for the rest of my life. And once you get beyond those years and you start realizing that there's hardship and there's regret and there's other things going on and you try to cover it up, we all know someone who's trying to cover up their past, right? Who's trying to just bury it and pretend like it never happened, putting new cement over top of it. But what happens when that is how we try to cope? Eventually, the cracks start to show and people get hurt unintentionally, but it causes more pain down the road. Instead, if we take that time, the effort, the hard work, and the painful work to actually go through the process of breaking up that old cement, and usually this, like I said, this takes time, this takes effort. A lot of times it takes other people close friends and to keep us accountable, family to keep us accountable, and sometimes even professional help to get through that process, that, while it may be painful and take time, is going to help reshape our foundations to set us up so that we can make healthy choices from here on out.